Okay, so it doesn't matter what business you do. Doesn't matter if it's a storefront. Doesn't matter if it's an online business. Doesn't matter whether you have physical customers or all of your business is done online. It doesn't matter. You are always going to have losses. You're always going to have times where you're going to have missed opportunities. Whether in terms of like a physical business, you're going to have people that may steal from you. You're going to have customers that want to return things. Even though they might have worn it or used the product. You're going to have employees that may misplace things. That's any business. It just is what it is. But as an Uber driver, it's a little different. Because obviously you're the one driving your car. You're the one letting the people inside your vehicle. So you would probably think like, oh yeah, you're an Uber driver, so you don't need to worry about that. Well, in reality, just like any other business, you're gonna have negatives. You're gonna have days where things can happen. And for us, it may not, it could also be the fact that somebody may break into your car and steal items inside of it. That could be a very real possibility depending on where you live. This is why it's super important to pay attention to your surroundings and all of that stuff. There are so many drivers that have gotten robbed. There are so many drivers that have had things stolen for no other reason than because they're an easy target. See, what you have to remember is when you have that Uber sign and you're advertising that, hey, I'm an Uber driver, I'm a Lyft driver, I'm an Amazon driver, whatever gig app that you do, I primarily talk about Uber drivers, but you have to understand that universally, unless you're actually a driver, most people think that you're making money, a lot of money. When people see that you're a driver, most people think that you're balling. Most people think that you have a lot of cash on you. So it definitely puts a target on your head because it's like, oh, he's a driver. I know he got money in the car. Oh, he's a driver. I know he's an easy lick, as we would call it in my neighborhood. He's an easy target. She is an easy target, which is why a lot of drivers don't like to work at night because it's a little bit more dangerous. Because obviously late at night, there's not as many people out. Like as you can see, normally this parking lot is, it's not really a parking lot, but normally this street is full with cars, but because it's later in the night, I can kind of walk down, I can walk around, and I have to worry about cars going back and forth. But it's also a danger, in terms of being a driver, because if there's no people, then, it gives you less protection, so to speak. If something happens, it's just you and that person, and you got to fight for your life at that point, or you got to figure it out. So, which is fine, life goes on. Material things aren't that important. It's not as important to lose your life over something materialistic, like a vehicle, a charging cable, a phone, you know what I'm saying? Listen, that's the whole reason why we have insurance. But the point of this video is that all it takes, so when you're talking about normal businesses, when you're talking about normal storefronts, like any one of these businesses, their biggest expense outside of buying merchandise and outside of marketing, their biggest, business expense that they have to account for is criminals. People going in and stealing stuff. They have to account for that because that's just what happens, times are hard. So if I still want this product and I ain't got no money, well, I'm gonna get that product even though I ain't got no money. And if you give me an opportunity, I'm gonna walk right out and, oh well. Which sucks, obviously it sucks because, yeah, I don't think anybody really, well, I mean, there are people that just like to steal, but I don't think that anybody is just like, I'm gonna steal for the rest of my life, like, a lot of people are doing it because they have to, because they want this particular item. And that's the thing about wants, you don't necessarily need it, but you want it. So you got to get it. And that's all, obviously, my bad. Obviously, that's a recipe for disaster. But so with a regular business like that, like a regular storefront, the biggest issue outside of like normal business costs is criminals, people stealing, and criminals taking the inventory, unsold inventory. That's a big expense. People defrauding, employees stealing. That's a big thing. That's why most places have things in place like asset protection and loss prevention and stuff like that, because that's a big expense and you got to cut it down, You got to cut it down. Now, obviously, as an Uber driver, we're not storefronts. We don't have a storefront where we have to pay rent and all of that stuff. We're not that situation. What we are independent contractors, but our store is technically our vehicle. In that sense, it's technically our vehicle. Every time somebody gets in our car, that's our way of making money, because they got to get in our vehicle. They got to get inside our vehicle. We obviously have to have insurance. You obviously don't want them to hurt themselves in the back seat, because if they get in, they could damage the vehicle, they could break stuff, they could hurt themselves, and now we are liable. So it's similar to a regular storefront where you got people that steal. We have passengers that try to get over on us. Like, they'll get in the car, and while we're driving, let me cancel out the ride. And it's like, if you're not paying attention, you look back on your app and it's like, why is it showing the home screen? Like, why is it not showing your destination? Oh, it's because they canceled out the ride. Or you have the passengers that's like, you know what? Ride was good. Love the guy or girl, love the driver. Hey, thank you so much. They get out of the car and then they immediately go and report them to customer support and say, hey, this was the worst ride ever. I feared for my life the whole time. The driver was speeding. The driver got into an accident. And boom, guess what Uber and Lyft do? Those false reports, they're going to immediately deactivate the driver and they're going to reimburse the customer, reimburse the passenger with a free ride. All the while you as a driver, you're stuck because it's like, what do you do? What do you do when you get that false report? That false report, it's not like Uber is going to tell you, hey, this happened at 9:25 a.m. on February 6th. They're going to say, hey, one of your passengers reported that you were intoxicated. One of your passengers reported that you were driving erratically. One of your passengers said that, you got a citation or you got into an accident. And yeah, so now we're going to perform an investigation. It's like, but they're not going to be specific is what I'm saying, because they don't care. It's an algorithm. They're just going to deactivate you. So now you as a driver, you gave an amazing ride, probably did great customer service, but now you're suffering in the same way that a storefront would suffer if somebody just walks in there and steals something. It's like, They paid for that item, got it, put it up on the shelf, obviously spent the business money. You know what I'm saying? Like it's an expense. It's an expense that now somebody is taking advantage of, somebody got for free, and it puts that store at a disadvantage, especially if they keep doing it. Obviously as drivers, a false report is way more detrimental to our career than somebody stealing an item, but it still is bad. It still is pretty up there. And then that's just that's a false report. But what happens if you get into an accident? What happens if you get into an accident? We all know that it can happen at any given time. I mean, let's be real, that's why it's called an accident. It's just, it just happened. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes you can, maybe it was just a bad driver. Maybe it was you wasn't paying attention, but it's an accident. So what happens when you get into an accident? And as I was saying, with the whole renting versus owning, if you get into an accident and you own your vehicle, well, now you got to file the claim. Now you got to wait for the insurance to pay for the car, take care of the car. Hopefully, now you got to hope that everything is A1 in terms of your insurance, because if they deny that claim, you stuck. Because that's your vehicle. That's your work vehicle. That's the vehicle that you're using to work. You know what I'm saying? So that's a huge setback. Honestly, if that's a big setback. That was my biggest setback over these last 5 years, was losing my personal vehicle, because it's like that accident. It sucks, but that accident is still. I'm still trying to figure out where my vehicle is and get compensation for it, lawyers and all types of stuff. Because at the end of the day, if insurance doesn't pay the claim, that's your vehicle. You got to take care of that vehicle. So, it can be tough, but that's the point of this video. You got to make sure that you're thinking about those worst case scenarios. You got to make sure that you put money aside. And you're covering yourself should that happen. Obviously nobody wants to wish that you get into a big accident. Nobody wants to wish that you get deactivated due to a false report. Nobody wants to wish, in terms of a storefront, nobody wants to wish that somebody comes in and tries to steal all of the stuff on your store. No, that's common sense. We don't wish that these things happen. It's just people are people. Life is life. Things happen. But the biggest thing, the biggest point that I'm just trying to remind you guys is that you can be somewhat prepared for these things. And the way that you get prepared is simply by putting money aside. First and foremost, it's making sure that you have AAA as a driver. If you're a driver and you don't have AAA, that's crazy. Because, we all get nails in the tires. We all get, sometimes you go outside and your car won't start. Like, you need AAA as a driver. That's the first standpoint. You need a spare, you should always be checking your tires, making sure that your tires aren't worn and stuff like that. You got to make sure that you have a spare tire kit, a plug kit. Because, if you're on the side of the road and you get a flat tire, you probably want to be able to patch that, right? Instead of having to wait for a tow truck, tow you to a shop, and then hopefully the shop can take you in. Because if it's at night, you just stuck. That's your whole night. That's your whole day. So kind of preparing for the worst type of situation. So having that patch kit, having AAA, knowing that you could get a tow. I recommend the most expensive package, just because of what we do. Obviously I live in South Florida, Miami to be exact. But what happens if I catch a flat tire up in West Palm Beach? And it's 2:00 in the morning. I need to get my car towed back to Miami, right? Wrong. The problem is, if I don't have the highest package, I'm stuck. or at least I'm paying for that out of pocket. And tow trucks are expensive. You know, like let's be let's be real. You know, in a pinch, I don't necessarily want to have to pay all of that money for a tow truck when I got to worry about the tire. You know, so having these things, preparing for these types of situations is how you stay ahead. This is how you keep your career afloat. You think about these possible situations. Of course, you can't prepare for every single situation. But the common things is, okay, what happens if you get into an accident? You gotta know your steps. You gotta put the money aside. I recommend everybody should at least have $500, $1,000 set aside just in case. Just so that you can be able to pay for a tire, you know, pay for a tow, you know, like, but yeah, man, being prepared is always important. You know, my uncle used to always tell me, and I'm probably going to butcher this saying, but my uncle used to always tell me, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And that's the point of this video. You should have a plan should something like that happen. Make no mistake about it. It could. It very well could. Not that I'm wishing it on you, not that I'm saying, you know, it will, but I live in South Florida, in Miami, where nobody knows how to drive. So for me, it was almost a guarantee that it's going to happen. You know, some of y'all live in better places. And so, you know, it is what it is. But just make sure that you're thinking about these things, because you don't want to be in a position that I was in where that was my main vehicle. I got into this accident. I'm fighting the insurance company. Now I can't work because that was my personal vehicle. And now I got to figure out how I'm going to continue, how I'm going to pay the rent or how I'm going to pay my light bill, or, you know, like, you don't want to be in those types of positions or be stuck on the side of the road at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, man, I just want to go home, you know, but you ain't got, you know, you may not have had that money set aside for a tow truck. So yeah, man. But listen, I love and I appreciate you guys for watching this video. As you can see, I'm just kind of walking around, so I'm gonna go back to my car. But yeah, man, if you need anything, please leave a comment down below. If you're not a part of the Telegram group, but yeah, man, deuces.